Welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast. This is Rika Patterson. I believe a leader should model the behavior and habits that we expect from our staff and team. Excellence, work ethic, grace, forgiveness, and love. Extremely hard, extremely tough, and together, because this gives us the best chance to achieve our goals that we have control over. The NCAA Leadership Development Program taught me many different things as an intern, work habits, and athletic professionalism. The ACE program taught me how to ace the interview, preparation, delivery, and messaging. Enjoy the episode.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown, and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive leadership in college athletics. We are joined today by Amber McCray. Amber is a former head volleyball coach at Louisiana Tech. Greetings, Amber. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Ty. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. So we were head coach for 6 seasons, and that recently ended.
Yes, it did about 2 weeks ago.
Right. And when I worked with the football coaching profession, the term we used was we are now in transition. And I appreciate you coming on to talk while you're in transition. Working with football coaches and working with sports, it's like a lot of coaches are like, hey, at some point we all going to get fired.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I got fired from the Football Coaches Association about 5 or 6 years, maybe 7. It's been 7 years, I think, now. And then I immediately felt like I was a part of the club. Like, oh, okay, I see what this is. And it wasn't because of my performance. The executive director wanted a football coach in the role that I was in. And I'm not a football coach, so it was interesting. But I wear it as a badge. You know what? I got fired. It is what it is. So talking to you, 6 years as head coach at Louisiana Tech, 14 years as a college coach. You were a club coach for 1 year. And you get dismissed after the 2024 season. One thing I know about you mentioned to me, is that you are an Enneagram 3, which means achiever. So describe that to me and tell me how being that and reconciling that with being dismissed, those seems like two things that may not really reconcile well together.
Absolutely. Enneagram 3s are known as the achievers. And, they're people who have had a lot of success at different things. One of the things that always comes up on it is they're, they may have been the popular ones in high school, and they have just been able to do a lot of things at a high level and able to have a lot of achievements. And for me, with that being said, failure is something that I have fortunately not had that much experience with. I've never been fired, hadn't had many goals that I set out to achieve and didn't achieve them. So this is definitely something that is new for me in that. But I think, and I understand how blessed I am to be experiencing that truly for the first time at nearly 40 in a few months. So I am taking that as, that is a new experience for me. And that is something that has made this an even more interesting transition, but it's also another opportunity to grow. And I am excited about that part.
I find that very interesting. I've talked with coaches over the years, and some coaches know that something may be coming. Like, we got to fix this thing this season, or they're coming after me or something like that. Tell me about that over the last couple of years at Louisiana Tech in terms of your thought process, your self-evaluation on where you were leading the program and how.
Absolutely, for sure. So first of all, I was hired on more of an at-will contract. So it wasn't the typical multi-year, 3, 4, 5-year contracts that a lot of coaches get hired on. It was something that kind of at the end of each year, we're evaluating and kind of seeing where we go. And I knew when I came here that it was going to be a turnaround job of something that wasn't going to be a quick fix. And I tried to make decisions that, as I talked to different mentors in the profession, that weren't quick fix things, that had more long-term solutions. And so that's how I looked at it in terms of what it would take. And I knew early on, my first AD, I was on number 3. When I was let go. But my first AD, we kind of had a timeline of, hey, within 4 to 5 years, we want to be competing more middle of the conference and be, going to the conference tournament, which was something the program had not done, had made it to the Conference USA tournament prior to last year. So that was kind of my initial goal. And every year we were working towards getting towards that. year 4, we actually finished a game away from qualifying, and that game, because of some tiebreaker things, would have actually put us 5th in the tournament out of 11 teams that year, which would have hit my mark of, 4 to 5 years of being more towards the middle of the conference. But instead, unfortunately, lost that last game. That put us tied for 8th. They take 8 to the tournament, but we were on the short end of the tiebreaker 6, so we were out.
Yep.
So leaving there, I still felt pretty good about that season of like, hey, we were getting away. We were right there. Excited to come into the 2023 season, feeling like we were at our mark. And it wasn't really until after that season, and we were able to qualify for the conference tournament, but it was fewer teams. We had 9 in the league, and they took 8. And we went in 7th. And it wasn't, so I'm feeling like, oh, we hit this mark. This is really good. But also understanding that's not the middle of the conference, and we still have ways to go, and was still excited to do that. And it wasn't until my outgoing AD, we kind of had a conversation before he left that kind of let me know how dire the situation was, of that it was, if not getting in that year, that there was a possibility, that I probably my time would have come to an end. And that was kind of the first conversation that we'd really had about it. And again, it was the outgoing AD. We had a new one coming in. First meetings with the new one was more so just, hey, where do we need to go to take this program to the next level? So it wasn't the true, I guess, hey, you're on hot seat this year kind of conversation that I'd heard coaches have. But at the end of the day, I knew I kind of put myself in that pressure situation of just knowing, hey, this year is probably going to be a make or break year. We need to do well. It's year 6. This needs to be the year that we make some things happen so I can get on contract. And, unfortunately, when it wasn't looking like that was the case, we had a major injury early in the season, and things just kind of took a downturn after that. And I knew there was a possibility that it could be coming, especially. So we were just holding on to let's get in the tournament and kind of go from there. And when after the last weekend where it became official we weren't going to be, I knew there was a possibility I would be having a tough conversation the following week. And that's what happened.
Yeah, interesting. Coaches I know are creatures of habit.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder after season 5, when outgoing AD mentioned, hey, we got in a tournament this year, we probably need to make that again next year to make things right. Did you make some adjustments, or did you just lean into the habits and the processes you already created because you believe they would help?
I felt like at that point we were in a really good position. We had, finally were able to kind of knock down the door after knocking on it the year before and be able to get to the tournament, and felt like that would be really good for recruiting. And it was, we were able to, by that point, the 24 class was already set, and we felt really excited about several of the student athletes we had coming in that class and the impact they could have early. And then we were able to catapult that into really strong 25 and 26 classes, probably some of the strongest that we've had in my time here. And now, obviously, those classes are going to be a little bit up in the air based on the new staff. But I felt still very optimistic, even after that conversation. So it wasn't a situation of we've had that conversation and now I'm on pins and needles and now I'm stressed the whole season and I'm looking over my shoulder. I really didn't ever feel that. I felt like, hey, we need to do well because we need to do well. And I am a competitor, and I have been a part of winning programs my whole life. So this in itself has been an experience. And that is something that we were still trying to do, but I still felt very confident we could do even after having that conversation. So I think there were things changed just in terms of, a little more sense of urgency in some ways, and especially even in recruiting for the following years. But we also felt like we are on the right track, had kind of corrected some things that needed correcting, and like we were moving in the right direction towards being able to hit the mark that my administration was asking of me.
Yeah, interesting. Thinking back to the Enneagram, the achiever,
Mm-hmm.
and never really experiencing what you consider failure, right? I wonder about that. Something like the people I've known that have been dismissed from their jobs, like there's a huge self-evaluation that happens afterwards, right? And then you tie that to being a coach, where like unless there's like super politics happening, everything is evaluated about how you're leading the program. So I wonder about the introspection. If this was somebody passing away, you would still be in grieving mode. We're only 2 weeks out, right?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I wonder where you are now, because it hasn't been that long. We're still, you know what I mean? The
Right.
girls are still there that you coached and still have a relationship with, all those kind of things. So
Right. It's funny you say that. I actually came across a meme last night that I shared today, because today is my last official day, December 10th.
okay.
And it was so fitting because it talked about, it's possible to be happy, and it wasn't sad, but it was like another conflicting thing with that. And it's possible to be grieving and have gratitude, and you can have a duality of your humanness, and it's okay to let yourself be that. And I felt like that was just so fitting for this situation, because there is it was, you can be happy and heartbroken. That's what it was.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And I am, in so many ways, I'm so excited about the future. I'm so excited about this pivot because of some different concerns and kind of struggles I've had in the coaching profession over the past couple years, 2 to 3 years, that has had me question how long I wanted to continue to do it. And so in some ways it was kind of relief. I told people sometimes God has to shut doors, or he has to give you a big boom. And if you don't listen to his whisper. And I felt like that, because I felt like there were several different things that were kind of leading me in different directions over the years. But that achiever in me, that Enneagram 3 in me, didn't want to fail, and just kept feeling like, if I leave now and we haven't turned it around, that's a failure. I don't want to quit. I'm not a quitter, like, I'm going to stick this out and see how long, see if we could be knocking and be right there. And, I had to, so there is, in some ways, I feel like God knew I was going to continue to just stay in it, even when there were a lot of different things that were pointing me in a different direction, and he had to come in and make it clear for me. And that's what I kind of took that as. So it was going back to your point of where you are in the process, and it is kind of like a grieving process, because I'm grieving the situation, the knowing I didn't get to do what I set out to do. I'm grieving leaving my student athletes. I'm grieving leaving my coworkers. That was the hardest part, I think. In all of that, I was just so floored. First of all, you forget how public firings are in college athletics. And, I get off the Zoom meeting with my team, and there's a press release immediately. So the phone calls and the messages come in, and it's like, you can't get fired in peace at this level. So
it's not happening.
It's not. And, but I was so thankful for all of those messages and calls that started coming in, because they saved me in that, in those initial days, and those, even still, I still have people calling and checking on me. And, those calls are from former players, from current players, from other coaches. I had a conversation with every coach here at Tech, which is kind of lets you know how close that camaraderie had gotten.
Yeah, 100%.
And, you're hearing from all these different people. And it was one of the things I said is, in the coaching, we are a lot of times reduced in press releases to a win-loss record. And that's, kind of how they say it, and my win-loss record was not good. I can admit that fully. But when you talk to all these people, whether, again, it's former players, current players, it's coworkers, it's a marketing intern we had 3 years ago, that was like, Amber, you're the first coach that made me feel a part of a team. It makes you realize you are more than just those numbers in that win and loss record. And you are the impacts that you have, and the relationships that you form do matter, even if they don't show up on paper in the matches, on the scoreboard. And I think that's what has helped me in this grieving process. That is what has fueled me and kind of made me excited, and made me feel like, what, even though this didn't turn out the way I intended, I set out for it to turn out this time 6 years ago, it was worth it. And it had a purpose, and it had a season, and it had reasons for being a part of my life and being a part of my chapter in my journey. So I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah, that's excellent. Sometimes God will shout at you if you don't hear the whispers.
Yes.
That is an excellent quote.
Yeah.
I think about me being fired from AFCA. I was there for like 15 years. And throughout time, you got your board of directors who advise you and people who care about you. They were like, Ty, it's time to leave, bro.
Yeah.
You get job offers, you get, what I mean?
Yep.
It's like, but I love what I'm doing and I'm here in Waco, Texas. And then God is like, hey, bro, you ain't listening.
That has been me. I had a number of other job offers, a number of different people, and even I knew it was something with my mom, so I'm very close to my family. And my family is we're a big sports family, always have been. And my mom knows her daughters, and it's me and my sister, and she just basically came to me last year and said, Amber, you're different, like I don't know. She could just tell something about the sparkle in my eye with coaching was starting to fade a little bit. And she, how mamas are, when they start getting concerned, they kind of stay on it. And she would just ask different questions. And when she started asking, like, how much longer do you think you want to do this? I knew it was affecting me, even if I felt I wasn't presenting it to be affecting me. And I went to therapy last year. Like it opened a whole can of worms of different things that I had never experienced. And when those closest to me started realizing things like that and making comments like that, that's when it really started to get me and started to be like, okay, maybe I really do need to consider something different. But again, I'm stubborn and I don't want to fail and I don't want to quit. And so I'm finding all these ways to justify staying in it and staying in the trenches. And if we just do this and we get this, we could make it work. And that's where, like I said, I really do feel God just had to step in. Like it came to that point where he was 100%. Like, it's time, my child. And it was.
I find that super interesting. There's a couple questions that are brewing in my mind, right? First, you had been considering getting out because there were concerns that you had about coaching, right? In college athletics, in industry, in the profession, on campus. And obviously, based on what you just said, they were affecting you as a person and your people around you could see it. Tell us a little bit about the concerns that you can share, right? Tell us a little bit about some of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So first of all, it goes back to even me getting into it. So I never aspired, even once I started coaching at Panola, I never aspired to coach Division I. I had several calls from ADs and SWAs during my 6-year time at Panola. And I would just always tell them, like, hey, I appreciate it. I'm honored. You're thinking of me, but that is not the path that I want to go down. So I wouldn't even waste their time because they would try to say, well, just come on an interview, come to campus. I'm like, no, I don't. I know that's not what I want. I don't want to waste your time. And I always said that because I felt Division I was a business. And I felt very much so like I can't have the same kind of family, community atmosphere that I have here at Panola or at this level if I go Division I. So I never pursued it. I turned every call I had down. And it wasn't until I think I told you on the last time I spoke with you talking to Mary, my coach at Florida, and she just basically told me, Amber, you could have that, you could create that at another program, and you could do that at the Division I level. And around that time, my sister was needing to get out of high school per her health. She had some different things that I knew she needed to get in a better work situation. And when she was at Panola, that was the most flexible and that was kind of the happiest she'd been in a work situation. And I felt like, hey, if I pursue another opportunity, this can open this up for her. So all of that aligned, from the conversation with Mary to my sister needing to get back to Panola, to a former player from Panola who was then at Louisiana Tech texting me and saying, Coach, you got to come here, after their coach had been dismissed. And she was like, I think you could do great here and you could do this and that. And she convinced me, and it was crazy because it wasn't, and that was the only Division I job I ever applied for and the only one I went after. And it was solely, again, because of the relationship that I had with that player and that belief that she had with me. So I think, that was what led me here, but I was still very much so, I don't want it to be a business and all of that. And then within these 6 years, every possible thing that could make it as business as possible has
Transactional,
happened.
super
Oh
transactional,
my
huh?
gosh. Like literally year one was the first year of the portal, I believe. But at that time, it was still so new. Like
Yeah.
a lot of people didn't know about it. So there weren't just a ton of kids in it at that point, like now. But you got the portal, and then you have COVID and the extra years, and then you have the financial constraints that brought, and then you have conference realignment and NIL, and now compensation packages, and
Yeah.
just
All the
literally
things.
we are in the most transactional phase of
100%.
college athletics we've ever been in, and it all happened within 6 years, and I think that's kind of the craziest thing when you think about it all, of just it wasn't something that was kind of laid out over time or progressed over time. It was sudden, and the impact it's had on programs and on coaches, I think, and on student athletes is huge. And that was something, those were some of my concerns, because again, the I want relationships. I want to build long-term relationships where I'm going to these kids' weddings and baby showers. I just went to a baby shower for a former player Sunday. That's what matters to me. And I just think we're getting into a climate where it makes it harder and harder to have those transformational relationships when everything
Yeah.
is so transactional on
Yeah.
both sides.
Right, that makes sense. And then with the upward trend, or the not even just upward trend, just that inflection point up of volleyball, women's volleyball, like more visibility probably means the more transactional nature of the sport in general, and then tie that to college athletics as a whole. I understand what you're saying in terms of your concerns.
1000%. It's a catch-22.
Yeah.
Volleyball is experiencing some of the, most watched games, most televised, most highest attendance records. Like, it is an incredible time for our sport right now, and the level and the games that you see, like, there's so much talent and so many exciting players. And I'm so happy for these players to get to experience that, because I've obviously loved this game since I was 8 years old, but it's fun to see so many people in the country recognize it too, and know its worth too. But with that, and with more money and visibility becomes, more money in the business, and that
exactly.
side of things, and having to, you recruit kids, and then you got to recruit them over and over again. And you got to there's a lot of different things that more money and more visibility has brought about that, are some of the not great things of the sport. And I think we just have to, moving forward, find a way to be able to reconcile those two, if that's possible, so that we can still have some great experiences from everyone around the board.
100%. Now, you talk about the things that have been concerns as you're going into the profession, but also being an achiever, there is this self-evaluation that's forced upon you when you are dismissed from your job, and you start thinking about, what could I have done different, as the head coach, leading the program, leader on campus, and those types of things. So tell me about how you reconcile one or two things that you felt like you could have improved on as a head coach.
Absolutely. I think for one, I needed to do a better job of me just kind of sitting down with our AD, whoever it was at the time, and kind of having a more set meter to achieve,
Okay.
of like, hey, this is specifically where you expect us to be that by this point. If it's a win number, if it's a, that would have helped. Just kind of knowing that would have helped with scheduling, for one. There were some times I made scheduling decisions that probably weren't the best from us in a long time, in terms of win-loss record, or even confidence record. When you're trying to build a team and get them confident. We my first year, we went 11-4 or 10-4 in preseason. Had a great preseason, won our first conference game, and but we didn't play the same competition level that we played in conference. And as soon as we took some losses in conference, that kind of losing mentality of like, oh, here we go again, came back in. And I totally underestimated that, because I'm thinking, we won 11 games. Like, we should be have fun. And I did not prepare or plan for that. And I think that really, hurt us my first year. And then you kind of overcorrect, and it's like, okay, let's get some really hard games, and let's make sure that we're playing those same level of attackers in preseason that we're going to see in conference. And now your team is beat up, and confidence is really shaken, and they're struggling, and you're going into these games that are very winnable games because you've already seen this all year, and they're not feeling so hot about it. So I think, just even having a better idea of what the expectations were for each year and me instigating that instead of kind of waiting an administrator to come to me, I think would have been, and very tangible expectations. This is where, we had talks about retention and all of that, and it's like we improved that. But then the wins didn't, improve, and that was still an issue. So just making sure that I think I needed to be better about, like I said, instigating those meetings and being able to have a more clear-cut view of our expectations. And then I think being able to recognize, and this is kind of the business side that I hate to get on, but when you are looking at those clear-cut expectations, recognizing that sometimes you have to make hard decisions that impact people that are for the better of the program. And, that was really hard for me being a relationship person, wanting to give people first, second, sometimes third chances. And, just really want to, when I recruited a kid, to see that kid through and see their development through. And sometimes I can look back and say that on some situations that probably was, though I felt it was best for that kid at time, it probably wasn't best for the program at that time, long term. And I think the coaches that are successful at this level, they understand that, they're able to kind of make those decisions very quickly and very easily. Where that just felt very business-like for me and very transactional for me. But, for a program and trying to turn, when you're trying to create culture and all of that, it was needed and it was necessary. And that was something that I just didn't do early on. So I think those would be the two main things that jump out to me. Again, hindsight is always 20/20, and I would lead every year telling my team of, hey guys, sometimes I'm going to make decisions that you may not agree with, or you may not understand. But I need y'all to understand that part of coaching, and head coaching in particular, is I don't always get to explain myself in those decisions, just for various reasons. There might be different reasons that you guys as student athletes, as players, don't have the whole picture. And I need you to, in those moments, just trust that whatever decision I made was because I felt it was the best decision at that time. And sometimes it comes out and that wasn't a great decision, after the fact. But at that time, it was what I believed was best for this team and this program as a whole. And I need y'all to kind of just trust that as we go through this. And just started leading with that probably like year 3 on, so that kids would understand, because that is hard, when you're having to do these things. And as players, you don't have all the facts, and we can't give them all the facts, to justify. So I think just in general, being able to make some of those tougher decisions earlier, and then being able to have more a clear cut view of the expectations would have been very helpful in the situation.
100%. So having a clear-cut view of expectations, sometimes that's not necessarily on you, right? That should be defined by the person who you're reporting to. But you're saying you would have tried to have more conversations to get a clearer picture of what's expected of you, right?
Yes.
And that would have helped you to be strategic in terms of how you made decisions throughout the program. But then also making a tough decision to think about the program as a whole, as opposed to making a decision that helped out an individual player. I mean, it shows that you care, but I do understand.
Yes.
What you're saying there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Excellent. So we talked offline, and you don't know if college coaching is in your future, right?
Right.
I
know it's not.
Oh, it's not. That's a definite. I mean, you make decisions while you're grieving.
You
I don't
do.
know, right?
You do, but you also, when it's something you've been thinking about for 2 or 3 years, it's not a knee-jerk reaction. I've had people challenge me on that, of like, are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
Are you sure you're just saying that just now? And I'm like, no, like, I've been thinking about this for a while. There were things, like I said, the way the climate is going with college athletics in general, that I just knew I would struggle with. And when you're leaving head coaches meetings that give you all the updates of everything going on, and you're leaving them kind of depressed or like, what are we doing? It's probably time, you find a different path. So never say never. I've learned that. But I know for the foreseeable future, and at least until, a lot of things get figured out, and college athletics can find that balance between the big money and the still being about the kids. It is something that I need to pivot from and get to pursue some other passions at this time.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we talked about being close to family. faith and relationships. I wonder if you were to tell the story of Amber McCray, someone said, tell me about yourself and how you're going to help out this organization. Say you go become, the CEO of a corporate entity or whatever you end up getting into.
Mm-hmm.
What is the story you tell about what you bring to the table and how you would help an organization?
I think when I tell my story, one of the big pieces that have to be told in my story is my value of relationships and of building those relationships with other people. I think that's important in anything that we do. People want to feel valued. They want to feel appreciated. And they want to feel, motivated. Just there's a whole major, the industrial psychology and all of that going on because people are trying to figure out how to best motivate people at work. So I think just when I tell my story, it's someone who is going to, obviously my faith and my family, as you said, are very big to me. My integrity is very big to me. I'm going to bring that to an organization because I'm just never going to do anything that I don't feel comfortable sleeping with, at night. And I think that's something that's really big, especially as we go about in this world. And you hear so many stories in organizations with people not doing, the right things morally. So that's big. And then just knowing that you're going to have somebody who's committed to growth and committed to learning and trying to figure out not just accepting defeat or accepting failure, but learning how making everything a lesson of something you can learn from. We actually showed our team a clip from Kobe Bryant earlier this year where he talked about failure didn't exist to him, because everything was just kind of a step of, okay, well, this is how I'm going to fix it, or this is how I'm going to grow and move forward from it. And that really resonated with me because, again, even in a situation like this, where on paper, I 100% failed, in terms of the win-loss records and all of that. I have to see that is something that, what was the purpose between my stint here? Was it to increase our visibility in the community? Okay, did that. Was that to increase our ability academically? Did that. But just trying to make sure whatever organization I get involved with next understands that they're getting someone who is committed to that growth, committing to learning how to, not just in myself, but in other people as well. And being able to just find solutions. I think we have a lot of people who are very caught up in pointing out all the problems, of everything that's wrong with everything. But if you don't have somebody committed to helping find solutions as well, you're not going to be able to go very far. And I definitely think that's something just from my background, from being someone, I hadn't had to deal much with failure, but I did have a lot of injuries in college and had to kind of learn resiliency and patience through that. That is definitely something that I'm able to bring to the table.
So then the follow-up is thinking about the things you identified. If you were to take off what everybody else evaluates coaches by, win and loss records, how have those things helped Louisiana Tech, either the volleyball program or Louisiana Tech athletics or campus in general, based on these are the things you say you bring to the table, but how have those things helped out the organization you just left?
Yeah, I think for sure, again, the community aspect, making sure that our program is a part of a bigger picture. It's a part of the athletic department. I was very big on being supporting our other student athletes. So, I'm at the men's and women's basketball games, football, and we were really big on telling our kids, like, hey, we know football, men's basketball, baseball, those are sports y'all are going to gravitate anyway towards, but let's go watch tennis. Let's go watch soccer and softball and all of these our track meet. We would help out and work that every year. I really wanted to make sure we had a sense of we are a part of a bigger picture and we are a part of a whole. And we definitely accomplished that in the 6 years and made a big turnaround in that area. I wanted to make sure, so not just with the college, but the community in general, our community service, we had several events we would help out with annually and just different people that got involved with Louisiana Tech volleyball who previously had no idea when our season even was. They were coming to games and getting involved with our student athletes because they were seeing them volunteer at their different organizations. So and different events. So that's something that definitely, I
So
think
you brought people to campus that wouldn't have come to campus in the first place.
absolutely, yes.
That's major right there.
We
Yeah.
had several people that were just able to get involved with our program, whether it was dart, a kids group that we would go volunteer. I went every Monday. It was my happy place, and
Mhm.
just something that was always kind of part of my self-care routine. And I had several players who got really connected with it, and they came all the time too. And then I would bring my team periodically throughout the year, and those babies would come to our games, and they would be screaming the kids' names and my name, and in the stands, and they were kind of a staple in the stands over the past 4 years ago is when we started
Yeah.
volunteering with them. So that was big. I think, and just the community in general and other student athletes, as I told ours, like, we can't expect people to be in our stands if we're not in theirs. So go, support them. And that was something that, our previous AD did a great job of harping on as well. So, and the current one too. So, I think across the board in athletics, that was something that improved greatly at Tech. But I definitely wanted to help spearhead it with my team and let them know that that's something we were going to be doing from the jump.
No, I think that's excellent. One of the solutions for people trying to bring in more revenue, because everything is a transaction now, is like, for the lack of a better term, increasing subscribers, right? And so we got to have people coming and buying into what we're selling in terms of athletics, whether they're like a diehard fan or not a diehard fan. If we can get more people to buy in, can lead to more revenue, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I think
Absolutely.
that's an excellent part of the story that you're going to tell as you continue on with the rest of your career. I'll ask this last question, then we'll wrap. I believe journalism major, sport management major, is like trying to work in administration and college athletics a direction, or do you have any idea where you want to go now that you feel like it is time for you to get out of coaching?
Yes, so that's a possibility. That was college athletics administration is actually the reason I chose to major in sport management in grad school. My initial dream was to be Linda Taylor, who was my boss at Florida. She was previously the senior women's administrator there. She now works for the NCAA. But I thought, hey, this is a great way for me to stay involved with college athletics. That's given me so much without the actual coaching part of it, because initially I didn't desire to coach. So that was what I worked in for my first 3 years before I started coaching. That's definitely, I would say a possibility to get back into, though maybe not the admin side of it, because I think some of the different trials that college athletics are facing, coaches are facing, admin is facing as well. So I don't think jumping into that would be great, because it would be going back into some of the same things that I'm looking forward to getting away from. But, I've heard people talk about getting into the academic side of things, or being even a life skills coordinator, and head the SAC up and all that at a college athletic department. There are different aspects and different ways, that you could be still impacting students and student athletes in particular at one of those universities without some of the stresses or some of the different things that I have disliked, I guess, about the
Right.
profession. So that's definitely a possibility, as well as there's some pro leagues starting up. We have 2 professional leagues, 3 if you count Athletes Unlimited in the country now, which is amazing. And, there are different opportunities that come along with that. So that's a possibility. Or just even, I'm really big on community service and serving underprivileged communities in particular. So there are a lot of different organizations I've been looking at in the inner city that would be a chance for me to still pour into other people and specifically pour into kids. So I'm open in that aspect, which is both a scary place to be, but also a really exciting place to be. So I'm a firm believer, Romans 8:28 is favorite scripture. And we know that in all things, the Lord works for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And that's always stood out to me, because the word all, that's not just the good things, the happy things, that's all things. And I consider this one of those things. So I think he's working behind the scenes, and I'm just excited to see what he has planned for me.
I think that's excellent. I thought about one last follow-up, and then we can end, I promise. While at Louisiana Tech, there were times, because you were an achiever, overachiever, where you wouldn't allow yourself to quit or wouldn't allow yourself to get out of a situation. I wonder about that, for the lack of a better word, tick of your personality, right? And you go into something else, are you going to read the signs? And are you going to take a self-assessment? Like, is this a situation I need to get out of and get over this achiever thing? Like, tell me about how will you approach that from this point moving forward?
Absolutely. I think it's something that you always have to, I'll definitely think about more now. And I'll think about, that doesn't mean you quit at the first hurdle,
Right.
you stop at the first hurdle. But when the signs kind of keep reappearing and when different situations start adding up and your personality is changing. Like, I think that's kind of the biggest thing for me. Being just such a eternally optimistic, happy-go-lucky person, to hear people close to me say they could tell my personality kind of started
Yep.
shifting, that was a telltale sign. And I probably, those comments first started happening like a year ago. So I probably should have listened to them then, because the people that are in your circle know you best and they can sense those things. And I appreciate having people in my circle who could tell me those hard truths when I was refusing to see them. So I think definitely listening earlier, and being just very clear about what I want and don't want for myself and for my future is something that I will definitely be more keen to look out
Yeah.
for in the future.
All right, which I think is excellent. Well, Amber, I really appreciate you joining us here and being so open with us on the One Question Leadership Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it.
Yes, ma'am. That was Amber McCray. Amber was a longtime volleyball coach, most recently head volleyball coach at Louisiana Tech. And of course, this is Ty Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.